Welcome to Stuck in My Mind podcast, the show where we dive into the mind of a regular guy on his road to self-discovery. You'll hear everyday people just like you share the latest topics, personal stories, and things they've learned along the way. And now, please welcome your host, Wise.
And welcome to another episode. I am your host, WIZE, and I have a very special guest on. He is a serial tech entrepreneur, a philanthropist. Welcome to the show, Luke Hohmann.
Hi, Wise. How are you?
Oh, man, it's great to have you on, man. I'm doing well.
All right. I'm looking forward to this.
Yes, I am excited. I'm excited. So, okay, let's tell the people a little something about you. So you have a company, FirstRoot.
I do. So FirstRoot is designed to kind of attack two really critical problems in our society. One problem is the racial wealth gap, which is just kind of awful. And that's the best way to say it. It's awful. And the second problem is the decline of civic engagement and the increasing polarization of the political process to the point where there's some really frightening statistics. 24% of millennials, so 1 in 4 millennials now think democracy is a bad way to run the country. And you don't blame them when you see how incredibly dysfunctional the national congressional politics are, and you kind of despair. And so it turns out that how we think about money and how we think about civics and democracy and our fellow citizens are very correlated. They're very intertwined. And if we create a society where we no longer believe in a common benefit, in an actual democratic process and a democratic society, then it's easy to basically not care about anyone other than you. What's in it for me, and why should I be of service, or why should I contribute to others? So FirstRoot is a company that I started to specifically attack this problem starting in schools.
Okay, cool. Yeah, you're absolutely right with everything that's going on as far as how our education system has failed our kids and everything. And it starts with these congressmen and these senators that I feel there needs to be a term limit on there's a term limit on presidents. There needs to be a term limit on Congress and Senate. And let's stop. Like, to me, it's like we're more focused on politics than really worried about the people. And it's a shame. It's so much stuff going on that instead of uniting our country together, we're divided by red and blue. And that just makes no sense to me. Where when I was growing up, for me, and I grew up during this. I was born in the 70s, raised in the 80s and 90s. So, and I was raised in East New York, Brooklyn, one of the worst parts of Brooklyn, during a time where crack was rampant and was everywhere. And for me to see where my community has come to now, where it's flourishing and growing, where there used to be vacant lots and abandoned buildings, you have new homes, new everything, and it's, for me, it feels good to see that change.
Yeah, and I think that it's kind of, to me, you're pointing out first hope, right? We shouldn't despair. If we come together as a community, we can make things better. I grew up on the other side of New York State, I grew up outside of Buffalo, and I'm a little older than you, not much, but I remember watching the degradation from the steel mill closing and people losing their jobs, and this kind of depression that occurs. And the way there's almost only one way out of it, right? The community has to come together. So the question becomes, how can we create a positive experience? Wise, we tell our kids knowledge is power, but they see that money is power. And we tell our kids, hey, you should get involved. You should do something. And then we tell them, but you can't vote. You're not old enough. You're not smart enough. You're not good enough to vote. So now you're telling our youth, hey, get involved, but you don't have any money and you don't have a vote. And we change that. And this is something that is a leadership position in New York City. So New York City, many of the districts and boroughs are practicing a technique known as participatory budgeting. And in participatory budgeting, ordinary people are given a sum of money to spend to make their community a better place. Now, you don't just walk up to the community and say, here's some money and walk away. It's actually a structured process. You engage the community and you start discovering the problems that might exist. Then people dream about ways in which the community could be better, trying to solve those problems. You design solutions, then you decide, you have a voting process, and then you go ahead and you implement those ideas. What FirstRoot does is we have built a software platform so that schools can have this entire process in an easy to use, safe, secure software platform that allows the kids to interact with this process using the approach that's natural to them. I don't care if they're using an Android or a Chromebook or a tablet or a Mac or a PC. Our kids are now the kids in middle school and elementary school and high school, they are digital natives. This is how they work. And so what we need to do is we need to give them an application that supports them in participatory budgeting and lets them learn through their own lived experience. Hey, what happens when we work together to create positive impact in the world?
Yeah, and that doing that is amazing. Like being able to bring people together to for something positive and good that's always a great thing. And that's why I do the podcast, is because I felt to combat so much negativity out there that I needed to really bring a show that was nothing but positive content, nothing but people coming on sharing positive stories, sharing things that might inspire others. I didn't want it to be just come on and not bring anything of not bring anything of value to the people.
Yeah, and it's amazing when you bring value to people and when you give them a chance to talk, just how much good they can do. We did a project last school year with the Academy of American Studies in Queens. And in that program, the kids at the school, they went through all of these phases that I'm talking about. And at the end of it, what they voted on was more feminine care hygiene products for the girls' bathroom. Now think about it, right? You've got boys, you've got girls, and through the conversation, the boys realized and they learned, hey, look, if a woman doesn't have the right access to the right feminine care products and they're menstruating, they're simply not going to come to school and they're just going to call in sick. And so when we talk about creating a safe environment for our kids, I believe that you have to include the kids in that conversation. How do we as adults know? I mean, you and I, it's one thing to say, yeah, we were both kids, but I was a teenager in the late mid-70s. You were a teenager a little later. And our issues were the issues that we were dealing with. Our kids are dealing with different issues. And if we don't engage them, if we don't listen to them, then we're taking our adult perspective into their environment. And we can't do that.
Oh yeah, because we're at the age where we first started learning about technology and seeing everything and seeing being able to see the change and everything. But these kids now are digital. They are digital. It's like my grandson, he just turned a year old. He already knows how to swipe. Like he knows how to swipe without knowing. Like he's just sticking his finger and moving it along, and he's like he knows when he has a tablet in front of him what to do with it.
That's right. And that's part of their natural world. And pretty soon he'll have an awareness and a comfort with virtual reality that would be new to you and me. And I think that this is what we have to prepare our kids for. We have to give them experiences that are not just some of the games that they get. And I'm not against games, right? I mean, games are great. My kids play games on their devices, but we also have to create experiences that promote community, that promote people coming together. We know from the data that we've seen from the whistleblower, Facebook is explicitly, consciously creating algorithms that divide people, that divide communities, that create separation from people coming together. They're promoting distrust. So we have to find a way that technology can be used to truly promote communities coming together. And I don't know of a better process than participatory budgeting. And I want to point out that to me, the root of that participatory budgeting process is real money. It's not what would you do if you had money. It's, hey, kids, you have $2,000, $5,000, $10,000. In some schools in wealthier parts of the country, we've seen the kids be given $50,000 to make their school a better place. Imagine what you would have done when you were in high school if someone said, hey, your high school has $50,000. How would you make your high school better? It's amazing what can happen when we give kids money and we give them a vote. And for me, the inspiration, and I know part of our podcast is, what's our self-discovery? What's our inspiration? And for me personally, I am a serial entrepreneur. I've started a couple of companies. I live in Silicon Valley. I in a sense, my life is fine, right? I grew up in Buffalo, poor, and with help and with hard work, and now I have a family I never realized I would have, and I love it, right? But the inspiration for me is now, how do I create that environment, that opportunity, and not opportunity in some namby-pamby or, kind of bullcrap language of like, oh, we're creating opportunity, but you know what I mean? Like, it's so hollow, but it's real opportunity because it's real money, and money is an amazing force when we apply it in this way.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. Like, some of these kids nowadays are investing in stocks. They have portfolios. They have all these things that when me and you were growing up, that's not something we were taught.
No,
we weren't taught nothing about investment. We weren't taught about stocks. We weren't taught. We were taught to be workers. That's what we were taught. Go to work, get an education, work for a company 30, 40 years, and hopefully retire with a nice pension from that place. That no longer exists. And these kids now, I know these kids who recently, who I didn't know what Bitcoin was, but these kids knew, and some of these kids are multimillionaires now because they knew what Bitcoin was.
Right. And that's, to me, that's great, right? I'm not going to ever deny that people who made good investments or had the right idea at the right time, hey, be rewarded. But then I always go back to those people and say, look, how did that happen for you? And what do you want to do with the community that you grew up in? What do you want to give back? I have a joke. I tell my kids, those who marry for money earn it. And they do this thing with me, Wise. They say, hey, Dad, why do you love Mom? And I always say, well, if I give you a reason, it's not love now, is it?
This is true.
This is true. So my point is, we also have to change the narrative so that we can say, hey, I'm really glad you made your money in Bitcoin. I'm really glad you were smart enough to buy Tesla at $200 and now it's 1,000 and you're and I'm even happy for you that if you needed to get your car to make yourself happy, or your TV, or go on vacation to some exotic location, hey, great. Great. But when you get all that done, and when you get all that out of your system, you're still going to have a ton of money. How are you making that community better? What have you done? Have you given your time? If you're wealthy enough that you don't have to work, well, what are you doing? Are you sitting around playing video games all day long? Or maybe you could go be of service to the community. Use your time, use your talents, or your treasure. Are you supporting your schools? Are you helping them out? Are you mentoring the kids? Are you going to have what you and I never had? You and I never had anyone come to the school and talk about stocks or investing.
No, not at all.
Right? We had a bank try and come and get us a bank account and then take our money if we made a mistake, like bouncing a check and not even telling us what happens when you do. And then you open up your bank account and you're like, hey, what was this $40 charge?
Yeah.
What happened?
Yep.
Oh, you made a mistake. Oh, yeah, I guess I did. But wow, that's a pretty expensive mistake.
Yeah, that's because we're not taught how to balance our checkbooks. We don't know these things.
So that's what we're trying to do at FirstRoot. We're trying to create a couple of things. One is we're trying to create a positive experience with money. And we're also trying to create a positive experience with civics, because working with other people in the community and making choices about how we want the community to improve is the foundation of our democracy. And it's going to take a long time, but man, I'm hoping that this process, when every school is doing it, will create kids who have a desire to participate in their communities as adults and start to change the narrative, because we have a completely dysfunctional Congress, right? You could just admit, like, Congress is completely wrong right now.
So you mentioned civics, right?
Yeah.
I'm not a Republican. I'm not a Democrat. But Ben Sasser, who's a Republican from Nebraska, talks about civics. He talks about how politics have become more about policy than about civics. And he made a lot of truth that policy now comes before the people.
Yep. And it's funny. I am a registered Democrat. I don't mind sharing that. But I think the worst thing that we can have for our country is a dysfunctional Republican Party. I don't think and have the same point of view as some of my Republican friends, but that doesn't mean I think they're wrong. It doesn't mean I think they're bad people. In fact, I've learned a lot about myself and other people when I've talked to them about their opinions. Why do you believe that? What value is motivating you to want to have that kind of a policy? So I think that we don't want to be apolitical. We want to be an inclusive politic. We want to understand that there are valid points of view, and we've got to figure out how to talk to each other. Like, we've got to figure out how to negotiate. if you're married, there's one person you got to negotiate with. It's the person you're married to. And it starts from there. Like if you can't negotiate with them, you're going to get divorced.
Yeah. I know that part. And the wife, yeah, she's very funny. The wife is very funny, but she's very supportive at the same time. So I got nothing but love for her.
Yeah, me too. I've got a fantastic wife, but I've also been through a divorce, right? So one time I didn't have it right, and this time so far so good.
Let's keep our fingers crossed.
Yeah. Day by day.
Yeah. But yeah, no, it's fun. This here for me has been great being able to do the podcast because it's opened up so much creative juices or flows or whatever in me that I wasn't aware that I had, and being able to just help people, because I've had episodes where people have reached out to me. I'm like, hey, this episode was great. I love what you was talking about with you guys, and it touched me and it made me want to take a risk and start my own business or whatever it was. And those messages are the ones that are really inspiring and really make me feel just make me want to continue to do this and just continue to put out the content that I'm putting out.
Yeah, and I think that, well, one thing that's cool is you couldn't even imagine doing this when we were in high school. Like all the things that we've been talking about. I know we sound like two old dudes, but and that's okay, right? I tell my kids, well, I sound like an old dude because I might be one, but but what's cool is that you're not young at heart. I mean, you're not old at heart. You, by adopting the podcast, about sharing your truths, about creating an opportunity for other people to come on and share their insights, you're actually kind of leveraging the best of technology in a modern way. So I often tell my kids, like, look, there's a difference between being old and acting old, right? You can be old by age and you can still be young and listen to interesting music. And I don't listen to classic rock because classic rock is like old and boring. I like the new stuff.
It's funny because that's one of the things. My wife could have easily been like, a podcast. Dude, you're 40 something years old. What are you doing? What are you talking about? You want to start a podcast? She could have easily been that way, and I wouldn't have blamed her. But she's like, she saw I was serious. She saw that because I'm a gamer by heart, and
Nice.
I just completely abandoned my PlayStation and started focusing slowly on creating content, on recording, and I've watched so much YouTube channels on lighting, on video editing, on what lenses was good for this or what cameras. All these things that I'm learning, it's actually adding value to me.
Sure.
So when she's seen that I was doing things that were adding value to me and not just wasting time playing video games, she was like, no, I know you're serious about this. She's like, I see you're serious. She says, when you abandon your PlayStation, I know you're serious about something. So I support you 100%. I'm like, oh, thank you.
Yeah, I think that's really cool. And I'm going to bring that back into like our kids. Yeah, our kids are exactly the same as you and me in the sense that when we want to do something, when we have that intrinsic fire, that intrinsic motivation, we go out and do it. We figure it out. And I'm sure what you now know about podcasting and lighting and video production is vastly more than when you started. And no one told you to do it, and no one paid you to do it, but you did it. You had true motivation, and motivation always comes from within. Well, I want you to think about, again, kids in schools, and you walk up to them and you want to teach them something about math. So you say, Ming and Satish have $30 and are going to the store. Apples are $2.99 a pound. How much how many pounds of apples can they get? And you're like, this is total crap from any realistic problem. First, I don't even know if they're hungry for apples. Right. So, but you go through this process of participatory budgeting. You say, hey, kids, you have this limited budget. It's $2,000. Give us your ideas for making the school a better place. And the kids say, well, you know what? We need new basketball nets for the outdoor court. Okay. Well, how much does that cost? And right there, you've got the kid hooked, because they realize, oh, the teacher isn't going to do this work. My parent isn't going to do this work. And I want the basketball nets. So they go online and they start researching. They'll probably go to Amazon first, because everyone knows the brand. And then you could say, well, could you get a better price than Amazon? Maybe. Sometimes you do. Yeah. How many basketball nets do you need? Did you include the cost of shipping? Who's going to help you install the basketball nets? Have you talked to the custodial staff?
Yeah.
Right? Have you talked to the right people? And they start to build out this proposal from a raw idea into something that could be implemented. And then they get to vote. And in that process, they make a pitch video. So they actually share with their fellow students through a pitch video. This is why you should do this. And they know how to create videos, like you were talking about your nephew or niece. I forgot which one it was, but they know how to use a tablet. By the time they're in third grade, they know how to make a video. They make videos all the time on their iPhones or their Android phones or their iPads. So they know how to make a video. So now you teach them, well, okay, it's not about making a video. It's about how do you communicate in a video? How do you show the benefits? So then they're standing up and they're learning how to pitch. Hey, you and I are pitching all day long, all right? We pitch our wife on a date. We pitch our kids on going on a vacation. We're pitching all day long. But now you're building that skill in a school. And so I think what you just told in the mini story about your life was, how does someone behave when they want to do something? And the answer is they do a lot. They work it out, they learn, and our kids are the same way. When they want to get something through that participatory budgeting process and program, they're going to figure it out. And that's what's one of the coolest parts about this entire program and this entire process, is that kids are motivated and empowered to do this work.
Yeah. And I see it all the day. I see it with my grandkids, and I see it with my nieces and nephews and everything. And these kids are amazing. They know so much in such little time. And it's different from our time. Our generation, we had to go to the library to find information when we needed to do the research and everything. We didn't have access to the internet like we have now. It was a completely different animal for us. We actually really had to go do the research. You had to look at the index cards and find out what section was. So we actually really did do the research.
Yeah, you actually did. And well, I would say that in both cases we were doing the research, but the way that we did the research was really different.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, it's okay. It sounds like you got a little one in the background, which is
that's my grandson. I got to go tend to him in a few minutes.
Yeah, no, it's totally fine. Hey, dude, I'm a dad. I got 4 kids. If you can't handle kids in the modern world, then come on, like really, like we have to be. I'm not. By the way, I don't know if it's the same, but we're the hangout house of the neighborhood. Meaning, we like the kids coming over. It's kind of noisy. It's kind of rambunctious, but kids really do need that one house, that one place they can go to, that they know they're safe and they know they're loved. And so if you've got that sound in the background, you got nothing but a smile from me, because that's an awesome sound.
No, it's great. Sometimes people, and they're like, oh, you don't need to edit. I'm like, no, usually I don't edit it out because It's
It's
natural.
life.
Things happen. Yeah, things happen. Even when I have guests on and their children come running on the screen and they're like, "Oh, I'm so sorry." I'm like, "Nah, listen. I have nieces and nephews that run on the screen all the time. I have my grandson always making noise. I understand. I am fine with it.
Yeah,
It
we
just
are
shows you. It
totally
just
fine.
shows you that we're real people. I'm a real person. I have real problems like everyone else. I have kids and family and everything. I just try to show the true me. I'm not trying to be someone I'm not.
Yeah, and I think going back to the theme of the show and some of the things I wrote down when I was listening to some of the other guests and stuff like that, it is so hard, I think, for our kids. So we talked about the advantages our kids have, right? Our kids have way more advantages with tech, way more advantages with in a sense the mechanics of life, if you will. I think one thing that's harder for our kids than for us is because social media, and we can just, reference Facebook's own data, right? Young girls really struggle with Facebook because of the body consciousness and the body image. And what we've learned is that the Facebook algorithms and the Facebook structure can actually make young girls more body conscious and less satisfied with who they are as people. I don't look right. I don't have the right clothes. I don't dress right. I don't do whatever. And what that means to me is in some ways, their life really is harder than our life. They have harder things to manage than we did at times. And we want to be careful about that. We want to recognize that they really do have some differences in their life, and building up that notion of self, that notion of you are just fine who you are, right? Whoever you are just fine.
And no, and I talk about this all the time. It's a completely different time from when we were growing up. If we were being bullied at school, it ended at school. You didn't have to worry about being unless you had problems at home. But for the most part, you didn't get the bullying ended at home.
You're
So
right.
now with social media, you're getting bullied everywhere. Facebook, Instagram, any form of social media, you're getting hounded on now. And that's where some of these kids, it drives them to do the things that they do.
Yeah,
It's
I
crazy.
never thought about that, but I mean, I never had that mental model, but you are so right. When in the old world, when you if and when you got bullied, and I do think there was more bullying and negative behavior going on, but it did end, right? It ended at school. You didn't have it at home, if you will. Now you log on and you kind of get that bullying online.
Yeah, you can't escape it.
Can't escape it. That's a really profound thought. It's kind of a sad thought, but it's true.
Yeah. Listen, social media technology has its good points and bad points. It's with it like anything else.
Yep.
But Luke, it is time for you to plug away. Let everybody know where they can find you, where they can catch everything you do.
Sure. It's not that hard, right? FirstRoot.co is our website. You can get me on social media pretty easily, pretty directly. I'm not hard to find. So I'm hopeful that people will get inspired by this, will want to talk about what would it mean to have a participatory budgeting program in their school, how would it work, et cetera, et cetera. We'd love to help them out and have them involved.
Awesome. That's great. And now it's time for shout outs. Big shout out to my Real Wise family, Brandy J, Poppy J. Love you guys. Big shout out to the boss lady. Love you, baby. Appreciate you. Big shout out to Bryson, who's in the background right now, who wants his Pop, and Pop will be there soon. Love you. And as always, a big shout out to all the essential workers out there. God bless you. Be safe. You know how your boy Wise does it. Peace out.
Thanks for listening. Listen on iTunes, Podbean, Spotify, and TuneIn. Find us on social media on Twitter at wise_b_blunt, Instagram at wise_b_blunt, and a Facebook fan page, www.facebook.com/wise76. Check back soon for new episodes. Until next time, peace out.